The humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to deteriorate, with UNICEF saying that 13,000 children have now died since October. The crisis has led many countries to try and get aid into the enclave by any means necessary. SABC News correspondent Alex Cadier joins us now from Amman in Jordan, where a lot of this aid is passing through. Alex, thank you so much for your time. I mean, this is a desperate situation in Gaza at the moment. Just talk to us about what is currently going on in Jordan in as far as this aid is concerned.
Well, what's going on in Jordan is a real coordination effort to get as much aid into the Strip as possible, and that really is a key role played by this country. Now, to give you a sense of how desperate things are on the ground in Gaza, a UN-backed report says that northern Gaza is just weeks away from total famine. They estimate that if things don't change, there will be total famine in northern Gaza as early as May, and that 70% of all Gaza is having to live with catastrophic hunger. Now, UNICEF also saying that malnutrition among children is reaching unprecedented levels in the Gaza Strip, and that children don't even have the energy to cry. That is according to the UN Children's Agency, UNICEF. So certainly that gives you a sense of how desperate things are for the Palestinian people in Gaza, but desperate as well for those Israeli hostages. More than 100 still being held in the Gaza Strip. We know from reports that an 86-year-old hostage had to celebrate that 86th birthday just yesterday in captivity. So those negotiations, we know, are ongoing, but the situation on the ground is very, very desperate, and that will put more pressure on those negotiators in Qatar at the moment, trying to broker some kind of ceasefire deal, more pressure on the international community trying to get aid. And also just news breaking in the last few moments, we know that President Joe Biden, the US president, will speak to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on the phone. That matters because of the US pressure on Israel and because those two leaders haven't spoken since the 15th of February. So certainly some developments here in the Middle East.
And it's very interesting, Alex, that you mention, of course, the captives in Gaza, and those, of course, are the Israeli captives. You speak about somebody celebrating their birthday in captivity. Just talk to us about those names then. Have they been released by Hamas, to Israel? Because we know that that was one of the reasons that stalled these talks between the two parties and various, of course, the stakeholders that were involved.
Well, in a word, no. That list that Israel had been demanding has not been released as far as we know. And one of the main challenges is really understanding the condition of those hostages being held in Gaza. That is something that we've seen updates from Israeli intelligence regularly saying that some hostages which were presumed to possibly be alive were actually declared dead. That intelligence from the Israeli services trying to get as much information about those hostages as possible. But that will be a very crucial part of those negotiations in Qatar. We know that David Barnea, the head of the Mossad, is in Qatar now, speaking to Qatari and Egyptian delegations, those crucial mediators, as well as the United States, trying to get the ceasefire deal off the ground. 40 Israeli hostages against 700 to 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. That was the demand by Hamas, a demand deemed too high by Israel, and certainly the rest of those demands by Hamas have been called ridiculous by Prime Minister Netanyahu, but certainly those discussions are ongoing. But that humanitarian crisis, as we've witnessed the urgency here in Jordan, the Jordanian Air Force coordinating other countries, including Germany, Singapore and Jordan, of course, using those airdrops of food, parachuting into Gaza, desperately trying to feed those populations on the verge of famine. So that is the pressure both on the ground for the people of Gaza, for the hostages and their families, and for that international community in those negotiations trying to bring at least a temporary peace to this region.